So something really weird happened with Evil Within 2. It took the nightmarish and dark corridors of Beacon Mental Hospital and traded them for the open streets of the Americana-inspired Union. It took a brash and sort of obtuse story of rage and cruel experimentation and wrote a story of grief and redemption. And it took a really bland and kind of forgettable character and built him up and fleshed him out.
I'm gonna stab the shit out of you.
They spooled out a very unique universe and refined its combat and stealth systems and doubled down on its big-budget cinematic qualities. It's bolder now, and it wears its heart on its sleeve. It could have wrapped up the main character's story from the first game and rolled out a new hero and told an entirely different story, but instead they chose to invest in that original story as our character is still recovering from the trauma of his journey through the first game. While the main events of the game aren't tethered too much to Evil Within 1, it's buoyed by it. It's referenced regularly, and Tango Gameworks really wanted to highlight the consequences of that story, the fallout for both the characters but also the world as a whole. It tells this story directly through Sebastian Castellanos, a rugged detective and nearly lone survivor of the horrors of Beacon, as he grapples with the failure both during and after the events of the first game. He wants desperately to redeem himself and to understand what happened to him and his family. This is one of those games that I would not recommend playing without having played the first one because it informs so much of the character's motivations and propels the urgency of the story if you know where it all comes from. And that story is bolstered through competent combat, great tension, horrific environments, and a refining of all of the surrounding systems to make Evil Within 2 a fantastic sequel. It wants to be fun and tense to play, but it also wants to examine loss and self-doubt and self-loathing. It wants to meditate on grief and determination, and it wants to spend time with what happens to a person after they survive the horror game that they're in. So let's talk about it. Okay, so I'm going to assume you're all caught up on Evil Within 1 if you're watching this. And I'll be referencing a lot of stuff from the first game without giving too much context, so if you're not up to speed, please go check out my video on it. And hey, while you're there, maybe give a thought to subscribing. It really does help me a lot. All right, real quick, so setting the scene, Sebastian Castellanos once again is sent back into STEM, a sort of shared consciousness dream world that's gone horribly wrong, in search of his missing daughter. You really just gotta watch the first one. Union, the name of the main city within STEM, has gone dark. Mobius, the masterminds of this whole thing, have lost contact with the folks inside, and those same folks have begun turning into monsters, inexplicably, and killing everyone and not much else. Sebastian's been through this before, and where in Beacon he was a competent survivor, strong and sturdy and resourceful, he's even more equipped this time around. He feels much more like an agent here, sent in with an understanding of the situation, mostly with nothing but a knife and a pistol and a radio to figure out what's going on and rescue his daughter. A real Leon S. Kennedy situation here. Despite his experience, he never feels confident, only determined and steely-willed to see the job done at whatever personal cost might come. We'll talk about that more in the story block. The gameplay at its core is mostly unchanged from the first game. You sneak, you shoot, you scavenge. Everything here has been refined though. Sebastian has gained some mobility, still winded after a short jaunt, but he's snappier on his feet and on the draw, quicker in stealth, and able to effectively use cover to sneak around, defeating some of the challenges with the camera from the first game. And as a person, he feels better suited to the task, if only barely. He still goes down in only a couple of hits, and the sprint time will undoubtedly get the better of you, but overall he seems like the right guy for the job. I like how they tuned it here. By this point, both the player and Sebastian kind of know how STEM works, so less time is spent reeling from the horror of the situation and grappling to understand what's going on, and more time is spent on problem solving and fighting. Though the game definitely remains tense and frightening, and Sebastian will encounter many things unlike what he's seen at Beacon. Some of that tension is lost in the open sections because, yeah, there's open sections now. The zones are a humble size and offer a surprising amount to do. Yeah, you can rush right to the main quest, but you have some side things to chase down, and I don't know how the hell you'd get by without doing them and spending some time stocking up on supplies, because ammo is so scarce.
Out of ammo.
All the little side things reward you with resources and ammo and weapon parts, or some with permanent upgrades like ammo capacity, or even sometimes full ass weapons like the sniper rifle or the shotgun. And I like these
Yeah,
areas because there's only
that's
one or
more.
two larger threads to follow out there in between the story beats, but they're all pretty cool and surprising and accessible without really signing up to do a quest. Like, I just accidentally walked into this house, which triggered a side quest that's super relevant to Sebastian's story. Or another where I slipped into the marrow, a disjointed little pocket dimension that lets you explore the guts of STEM. Stumbling onto these things made Union feel kind of big and mysterious, dangerous, and unpredictable. It works because the open world segments are just small enough that only a couple of surprises are really needed to make it feel full. You might have a fun little jump scare where you try to step onto this train or stumble into the city church and get ambushed. There's these nice little flourishes here and there that they're missable and not essential at all, but they flesh out the open world segments and keep things moving when they would otherwise get stale. There's nothing revolutionary to do or find here, but you're also not ticking off open world map markers or climbing towers to reveal the map or anything. It's less freedom and more breathing room. But yeah, as for stuff that's worthwhile to pursue, you can do a side thing that centers around Sebastian's unresolved trauma from the first game. These areas are the most evil within one that the game ever gets as you're dropped back into Beacon. They're fairly short and focused, but feel decidedly different than the rest of the game. They're eerie stealth segments where you have to avoid an instant kill enemy. It's nice, and it feels like the opening chapters of the first game. It's like Sebastian never really left. Picking up the first encounter allows you to slip into one later in the game, and it's all very good. And while Union is neat, it also feels like a pretty flavorless rendition of suburban Americana, a small city with a diner and a church and two-lane roads and some rural houses and a mechanic shop. As STEM kind of collapses around it, the city is chipping away into oblivion, and that's fun. I can't help but feel like Union itself isn't changing enough from this collapse. Like, everyone in the town turns into these horrific monsters, but everything else just remains unchanged. We learn in Evil Within 1 that dominant psycho personalities can influence STEM and change that world around them. We definitely see that here in both the main antagonists' respective areas, but their areas of influence appear to be only in their immediate surroundings, and I'd have liked to see more nightmarish shit while running around Union. Like, Stefano, one of the big bads, has taken over the movie theater, and that's cool, but you step 1 foot outside the parking lot and everything is normal, with a nice little coffee shop next door. Hell, even if it was influence sent out from Sebastian's mind, right? He's definitely gone through it, but he doesn't seem to kind of propel any of this world-altering influence like the bad guys do. Union is fine, and while I liked exploring and I like the breathing room it provides, I'd have liked something more striking. One of the series' strong suits is its ability to set a strong atmosphere, and I just don't really get that from Union. The Marrow is also kind of like this. It's a normally inaccessible series of nondescript service tunnels that you can jump into to navigate around Union. In lore, it's used by STEM staff to manage the city, conduct their evil research, and get around quickly. It's both a physical and metaphorical nervous system for the city. It's the Marrow. It's also beginning to fall apart, as if destroyed by some earthquake or landslide. It seems that every aspect of the built environment within STEM is collapsing. This place is neat, and I like it. Yeah, I mean, they're pretty bog standard tunnels and concrete walls, but it has a vibe that's missing from the open areas. It feels claustrophobic and oddly forbidden, like you're peeking behind the curtain of STEM, seeing this place for what it really is. I like the concept here. Just like dominant personalities can shape the STEM environment around them, an exacting corporation can create a sub-layer for efficient control and operational support. In practice, when you think of being inside STEM, you picture this little pocket dimension, a little layer beneath it as well. It's cool. And even if I like the concept, it does feel kind of mundane visually. You get some labs and larger areas, but it feels kind of bland. Seeing as it's separate from the main STEM environment, it would have been cool to see it change radically as STEM collapses or to be influenced in other ways. It's neat because here is where we get the first impressions of this gooey, melted plasma, marshmallow fluff looking shit that we see a lot more of in the late game. It gives you the idea that there's something else living down here, something else going wrong, and that's cool. We'll talk about that later in the story block. It's fine. These areas kind of bookend the longer stretches of linear missions and offer a time to restock and explore for a little bit. And you'll need to restock because I have no idea how you're getting through these longer stretches without scouring these areas for resources. If you don't, you'll miss tons of ammo and upgrade materials like weapon parts or green gel for Sebastian's abilities. Combat here is very similar to Evil Within 1, with limited resources and tough enemies. You need to be really thoughtful when you spend your ammo. I won't spend too much time on the weapons because most of them are brought right over from the first game, like the shotgun or the sniper or the agony crossbow, the warden crossbow, all of which are completely unchanged. It would have been nice to see some new functionality with the crossbow as it's kind of an iconic weapon, but whatever, it's good. Kind of cool, you can find variants of most of the weapons in the game. I think there's 4 different handguns available. There's the starting pistol, a laser-sighted variant, a silenced one, and then Sebastian's trusty revolver from the first game, which you get for completing all of those personal side missions I mentioned earlier. Now, I wanted to use the laser-sighted one because, like, come on, it's a laser sight, you have to use it. But it also comes with this mandatory enhanced zoom that I just couldn't jive with. I don't know, the aiming is fine, it's not the smoothest, and it zooms in so much that I find it really tough to use. I messed with the FOV and I just could never get it quite right outside of the first person view. Oh yeah, there's a first person view as well that they added later. It's fun, but maybe don't play the whole game in it. The silenced handgun is whatever. Generally, if you can get a sneaky headshot off, you can just as easily go for a guaranteed stealth kill, so you should just opt for that. A headshot doesn't guarantee a kill, and you can run the risk of missing your shot, and that's a wasted bullet, so I just don't really see the value of it. End of the day, you probably just want to stick with Sebastian's revolver. It's quick as hell, snappy to aim, and deadly powerful. You get it a little later, but it's worth sticking with. Yeah, and there's some new stuff too, like a automatic rifle and a fucking flamethrower, both of which you get very late into the game and chew up ammo really fast. For the rifle, you're really not going to find any ammo for it, so you have to craft it. It's a good choice later on, but on your first playthrough, you might just ignore it. And the flamethrower sucks, full stop. You get it very late in the game, and the only ammo that you can find for it is dropped by the hardest regular enemy to kill out there. This thing weighs 1,000 pounds and you can barely move when it's equipped, and it just churns through ammo so fast. I never found a good place for it. You have crowd control tools in the form of pretty much any of the crossbow bolts, so you should never really be trying to take on whole hordes of enemies outside of a few encounters, all of which you've already cleared by the time you get the flamethrower. Yeah, it feels like a wasted slot. Other than that, things are mostly the same from the first game. You lose the matches and the grenades, but get a couple new weapons and better functionality all around. It's good. The weapons all feel nice to shoot, hard recoil and heavy feedback. The sniper isn't as OP as it was in the first game out of the gate. The shotgun still explodes heads and the crossbow is busted as ever. It's all good stuff. Everything here feels strong and worth investing in. The upgrades are mostly the same, save that they're broken out of the green gel system now into their own tree that requires weapon parts. Like the first game, I invested in crit chance immediately, which paid dividends. Invest in firepower and then you'll be okay. About the crossbow, what's great here is that all the bolt types gain additional functionality as you cash out of their path, and some of these upgrades are fucking great. Harpoon bolts gain fire damage over time. Smoke bolts gain the ability for stealth kills and damage over time, which is probably the best to go for. One smoke bolt to guarantee a couple of kills is a pretty nice trade. Also, like the first game, you won't be able to upgrade every weapon to max on your first playthrough, so pick a couple that you like and invest in them. You can't rush through them either, as the upper tiers are locked behind high-grade weapon parts or red gel, so you'll hit some walls. You come across enough that your arsenal won't feel thin, but they're rare enough that you need to be thoughtful as to what weapons you want to commit to. It's good stuff. I like the balance. That's about half of the character progression, the other half being the green gel funded ability stuff that we also see return from the first game. It's more robust here, breaking out Sebastian's abilities into categories like stealth, combat, health, athletics, allowing you to kind of invest in your playstyle. And yeah, just like in the first game, get the fucking sprint time. Like, come on. It's better than it was in the first game, where just the idea of a speed walk would give Sebastian conniptions, but you're still going to be out of stamina all the time. It hardly recovers during combat, so you better manage it well. If you want to be stealthy and break out of a fight, you need stamina. If you want to reposition during a fight, go for headshots. You need stamina. If you just want to get around the open areas in Union, you need stamina. If you want to use the best ability in the game, you need stamina, as it drains when you use it. Jesus, just invest in the stamina. You're going to need it. Outside of that, similar to the crossbow bolts, there's a couple of great abilities here locked away, like this bullet time mode that kind of breaks the game. The slowdown is so intense and the duration is generous based on your sprint time, but generally it's enough to get a guaranteed headshot or two on whatever you're fighting. You might find it harder to use in larger fights because maybe you can't kill everything in one go and then you find yourself exhausted with no stamina left to reposition. It's very, very strong, but it's locked behind a few upgrades and to the tune of a cool 75,000 green gel. When I saw this on the tree, I rushed it, hoarding all of my gel until I could get to it, and it was only kind of worth it. It took me all of the middle of the game saving up, and because of that, Sebastian was pretty anemic in other areas. Maybe pick this up on New Game Plus. I think the other area to focus on is stealth. It's gotten an overhaul here with a suite of abilities and a tighter maneuverability when sneaking around. Evil Within 1 wanted to give you the impression that a full-on stealth kind of mode was viable, but I never really felt like it was. Here, you can go through entire segments stealthing around and sneak attacking everyone without too much trouble. You could argue that the stealth is too easy, and I'd probably agree with you. But that's only after a few upgrades. At base, Sebastian moves like a snail, and you'll want to upgrade his sneaking speed as soon as you can. Max this out and he feels pretty snappy, easily able to catch up with any enemy that's walking away from him. There's also a corner kill ability that's pretty busted, and finally you can get this rushdown attack that's an absolute game changer. You can cover a great distance in a flash, take down an enemy, and then slip back into the shadows. This makes no noise whatsoever, so you can chain this together and really just thin out a room so quickly. You get very, very strong in this game. The balance swings a little too far in your favor, but at the same time, it feels nice when you're fully equipped towards the end of the game. You've got everything you need in these upgrades to face all the threats there are, and then some. By New Game Plus, everything is just a cakewalk, but it's a long way to get there. The progression is nice, so by the time you're blowing off heads and sneak attacking your way through entire areas, it feels earned. You do this by upgrading in Sebastian's room, just like the first game where you could look through the mirror and be teleported to a save room. Here you're taken to a recreation of his office back in Crimson City Police Department. I love this space. One of my main criticisms of the save room with the first game was that it felt a little empty, with your only actions really being to level up his skills and unlock some extra supplies. Here you have all of that with the addition of weapon crafting, as well as spending some time at the projector, where you can check in with Kidman and reflect on your memories, events from the first game, and the consequences that came from it. I absolutely adore this. You can take a moment to sit back and drink some coffee, pull away from the chaos of Union, and give Sebastian a moment to look inward, regroup, and process some of the crazy shit that's happening to him. As character moments, these are fantastic. Sebastian is angry and guilt-ridden, and you get to watch as he dwells on the past and worries about his future. I want to talk about it now, but we'll save that for the story block. All in all, Sebastian's room is great. It's a constant reprieve from surviving out in the city, and I always look forward to making some stops here and taking a moment to decompress. So you step out of Sebastian's room. What are you using all these guns and abilities on? Well, the STEM environment is collapsing. It's infected by psychopaths, and all the structures that keep this thing running are failing. So naturally, it's full of monsters too. You've got the same zombie-like enemies from the first game, this time called the Lost, very creative, which they'll be about 80% of what you fight in the game. And I think these guys, they're kind of lame. I don't know, I don't like them. They just don't really have anything going on. They investigate if they hear you make a sound and then charge at you once they find you. Sometimes they're armed with axes, but they're always aggressive and very basic. I don't know, there's something about their design that just doesn't land with me. They're partially mutated, but look awkward and kind of gangly. There's nothing striking about their design, and they don't have any shock value. Funny enough, I think the very first one that you meet is the most interesting, as it seems that this one has retained some of her humanity, but it's twisted and violent as she force feeds this kid and totally unnecessarily smashes his face into the table. It's brutal and sets these guys up as semi-intelligent, needless killers. But we don't see that anywhere else in the game, and save for one variant, they all act the same. They have this really weird roar. It just sounds so stock, so bland. I don't know, it feels unintimidating to me. It's a bummer that these guys are so flavorless, because Evil Within 2 is fully capable of designing terrifying enemies like this one, a ghostly pale figure in a thin white dress, bloody knife in hand. It meanders around, head slumped, hair a stringy veil over its face. It's human, but if you get a good look at its face, it's disfigured just enough to be uncanny and horrific. Its sound design is great too. It makes these high-pitched, wet, gurgling noises, and it shrieks when it attacks. Functionally, it's cool because you almost need to stealth kill it or it'll rush at you, and it's very difficult to deter. And on top of that, it requires 2 hits from stealth to take out, so it's not nearly as free as the other enemies. In a room, it acts as this great obstacle that you have to carefully deal with. It's a high importance threat that you need to think and plan around. I like it a lot. You might find one roaming around on a lonely road or nested in with a group of enemies during the more linear levels. Wherever it is, it's always a threat. It's good stuff. In combat, these are really the only wrenches that the game throws at you. You might come across a dog-like crawling enemy or even some big fat bloated variant of the Lost, but they're kind of whatever. You gun them down or stealth kill them and move on to the next. There is one enemy that's pretty neat, some twisted up thing full of screaming faces and groping hands. If it catches you, it'll let out this scream that saps you of your stamina, your most precious resource. It's a nice little punishment if it happens, but they only appear in segments where they're pretty easy to avoid, so I never really found them to be too much trouble. There's these flaming variants that can't be stealth killed while they're burning, which requires a little more planning when you're sneaking around, and if you get that rush down sneak attack, it pretty much nullifies this enemy. And then there's this large flamethrower wielding guy that requires like 10 stealth attacks to take down. Outside of a boss fight featuring one of them, you'll encounter them in the open world, and it's just so easy to cheat these guys' AI. They have an area that they want to patrol, so you run in, sneak attack, and then retreat. You'll lose them in a second. It takes forever to take them down, but it's free. They're cool and nightmarish in a way that most of the other enemies aren't. It's like something on a Silent Hill. They're relegated to the final stretches of the game, and it would have been neat to see them interwoven into more encounters. I don't know, the suite of enemies is fine, but they can feel a little mundane. The few highlights here pop up with enough frequency that you're never going to get bored, but combat scenarios here aren't the most interesting. The combat itself, the stealth, and the gunfights feel great. The upgrades from the first game all feel deserved, and Sebastian is a much more competent fighter this time around. There's a fair amount of bosses to be fought here too, most of which are pretty interesting. The highlight here is probably the Obscura thing that's kind of reminiscent of the monster that Julie Kidman faces in the DLC from the first game. This multi-legged ballerina thing with an old-timey flashbulb face. It moans and skitters around, scanning for you and darting up to the ceiling, demanding intentional use of all your defensive bolts like lightning or frost. You've also got this hulking monstrosity of a thing that's made up from one of the key antagonists, a lumbering amalgamation of victims all bound together, armed with a gargantuan buzzsaw. It's simultaneously hilarious and horrifying. There's even a section where this thing patrols the open world, and that's fantastic. It raises the stakes and makes the zone much more dangerous. When you hear it pounding after you, you're in trouble. There's also the Anima, the instant kill boss I mentioned earlier. She floats around and cries, whispering Sebastian's name. Oddly, the same blue filter effect flashes across the screen when she shows up that happened in the first game when Ruvik chased you. This thing is cool, man. It's not explored too much in the game, and it kind of feels like another loose thread that we're not going to get closure on. It is a thing that somehow exists within STEM. It targets and isolates people, eventually cornering them and turning them into the Lost that we see running around, from what I understand of what I've read in game. It seems to pull Sebastian back into his memories of Beacon, another step on his journey of overcoming that trauma. There's some cool reading to be found in game about people living within Union whose outside Union memories begin to come back to them. And if that happens, this creature seems to show up and begins to hunt them down. It's a really, really neat boss. Yeah, there's a few highlights here, and I'd say most of the bigger set piece bosses are on par with, or if not better than, the Evil Within 1. They're usually pretty tough and demand full use of your abilities and weapons. Ammo is as tight as ever, so save up. You'll need to throw some lead with these guys. Before we get to the bosses like Stefano and company, we need to talk about the story. So from this point on, nothing is safe. If you want to avoid spoilers, click here. Okay, here we go. Again, assuming you're caught up on Evil Within 1, I'm going to pick up on the story beats from the beginning of the sequel on, so don't expect a lot of backtracking here aside from a reference every so often. So after the events of the first game, Mobius was able to walk free. The incident at Beacon was considered a disappointing misstep, but it was covered up with the help of the top brass at the Crimson City Police Department, and work on STEM continued. Ultimately, Mobius learned a lot from Ruvik's and Marcello's efforts. The foundation of the STEM system was clearly laid, and they ran with it. They reiterated on a bigger scale where instead of trading mental patients for funding, they went public with this bad boy. They opened up recruitment centers where folks could sign up to join Union, the latest iteration of the STEM environment. Union is a carefully monitored, controlled system where your memory is wiped and you're given a new life, new background, new family, everything. It's a clean slate, an opportunity to live in a utopia. It's small town Americana and kind of flavorless all around. Not much insight is given as to what it's like living within Union. The whole concept is kind of underdeveloped, with much more emphasis placed on what's going wrong with life in Union as opposed to how it worked or what it was like before it collapsed. Like the Beacon iteration of STEM, they need a battery to run this thing. Unlike STEM, they don't need a psychopath's brain. They could very easily get one, sure, but they've determined that, a feverish hellscape is not the most conducive environment to their plans, so they opted for the next best thing. A child's. Like, sure, it's underdeveloped and malleable, right? Empathetic and curious. It's boundless in that sort of brain power energy thing that they need. It's stable. That's what makes STEM happy. A stable brain. Sure, I guess. But the perfect brain also happens to be Sebastian Castellanos' kid, Lily. So there's your hook. Sebastian is brought back to Mobius and jacked into STEM once again, this time to save his daughter. I think it also kind of works as Sebastian is one of, two survivors from the encounter at Beacon. He's already fallen off the horse. He's unreliable and full of wild conspiracy theories. His search for his missing daughter will go nowhere because of this. It's a vicious turn of the screw on a poor dude who's already lost everything. And now they also have in their back pocket a durable survivor and a disposable agent if something were to go wrong in Union, which of course it did. Sebastian is arguably the highlight of the game for me. He's come such a long way from the stoic, grunting detective that he was in the first game. This time around, he's deeply vulnerable, often hopeless, and always angry at his failures at Beacon and his inability to track down his wife and daughter.
Always.
You wouldn't have told me about Lily if your damn machine didn't go on the fritz. I would have spent the rest of my life mourning her and you wouldn't have cared.
Much of the game is spent on his reflections and anxieties and his steely determination to fix his perceived mistakes. The story here is about guilt and redemption in a big way. It's really a through line for every interaction that Sebastian has with other characters, and it's what propels this story forward. Like, often in the moment, he'll express his fears of losing Lily or failing her again.
Son of a bitch still has Lily. And now I'm back to square one again.
He's not exactly chatty, but he'll often talk about what's on his mind, even if it's just getting the fuck out of wherever he is.
It's coming for me. I gotta get out of here.
He's aware of his odds and never feels confident in his task, but he's also unwavering. He hates that he's back in STEM and regularly talks about that.
It's just as bad as Beacon in here. No, it's worse. My daughter wasn't stuck in Beacon.
You can hear the dread in his voice when he compares Union to Beacon, when he draws parallels to it, or when he takes stock of his really shitty situation. He's not optimistic and laments being here alone, sometimes asking for help and not often getting it. He shows his disdain for the coward O'Neill, who refuses to help, or for Sykes, who he works with but has a hard time reconciling his affiliation with Mobius. There's something to be said about really making you feel like this dude is stuck in his place. He hates it there, but he pushes on.
All right. What the fuck is going on here?
The best dynamic here is between Sebastian and Kidman. You'll be in regular contact with her, and Sebastian alternates between mistrust and disdain and begrudging respect and understanding. You'll have a lot of back and forth with her back in your office where you can reflect on the events of the first game, both as a way to get players caught up, but also as a way to dig further into all this shit Sebastian is stuck on. She alternates between pushing back and defending her choices to join Mobius, and hinting at guilt for the part that she played in the Beacon incident. Though she and Sebastian never share a pure moment together, she wants Sebastian to make it out of there and is working towards that. Their relationship may never be perfect after Beacon, but there's some mutual forgiveness between them by the end. I do like that Julie never falls into a motivational support role for Sebastian. She's never a shoulder to cry on and remains distant and closed off as she was in the first game. When Sebastian laments the situation he's in, she's basically like, come on, man, you just gotta get through it. Go get your kid. Julie remains a really great character, morally good, but ethically gray. So yeah, as for Sebastian, fuck Union and fuck Mobius. He's here for Lily. You can meet a couple of other characters and he regrets not being able to help them out, but the thought of straying from his goal of Lily never crosses his mind. You'll meet Torres, another Mobius member who is just as gung-ho about saving Lily as Sebastian is. These two gel, and while you don't spend much time with her, it's really nice to see Sebastian kind of joke and fight confidently along with a partner. So yeah, all that to say, Sebastian feels much more fleshed out this time around. The end of the game really doubles down on this arc, and by the end, I think we get a complete, buttoned-up story for him, and I like it a lot. Okay, so those Mobius agents I mentioned, they're part of a repair team sent in to fix Union. When they went offline, they sent in Sebastian. You track them down, most slaughtered and suspended in perfect brutality. It turns out that the folks outside of STEM didn't really know just how bad things had gotten inside. Julie had hoped it would be a simple rescue mission, but it was not. You'll spend a chunk of the game chasing down this team. You get to meet and chat with some, others you won't. Part of this team was Myra Castellanos. Myra collaborated with a few members of this team, Torres, Yukiko Hoffman, Julie Kidman, and Theodore Wallace, to hatch a capital P plan to rescue Lily and take down Mobius from within. But turns out folks are rarely equipped to weather the deteriorating effects of a STEM environment, and the plan basically fell apart as soon as these dweebs entered. The biggest problem came from Theodore Wallace. He'll turn out to be one of the main antagonists that you face. In a former life, he was this motivational speaker, spiritual guidance counselor guy. He worked with Mobius at a high level as the head of recruitment to Union. He secretly collaborated with Julie and company under the guise of wanting to free Lily, but really he just wanted to get into STEM himself. When he got in, he went nuts. Of course, full psycho. Deeply charismatic, he spooled up this vague religion with him at the center. It's not very compelling. He just wants power. He really wants to judge people for their sins and add them to his little flock of devoted followers and destroy them if they refuse. Some of the stuff with Theodore is pretty on the nose. I just don't like it. I get his motivation and his intense charisma as a psychopath, that works. But I don't totally get his end game. Does he just want to rule over this little pocket dimension forever? It's running out of people pretty quick and the streets are, floating off into space. I get that if he can get control of Lily, he can stabilize things, but he worked with Mobius. He has to know that the folks outside can just flip a switch, pull the cord anytime that they want. His whole shtick is just kind of underdeveloped. It's all vague and spoken in non-committal ideas of redemption and trauma without really ever saying anything of substance. Like, he wants you to join his flock and offers his protection and guidance, but like, from what? He swoops up guys like O'Neill who fall under his spell and revere him, but I just don't get it. The writing isn't strong enough to paint him as anything other than a comically evil priest type guy. How will he rule the world? How will he treat his followers? His world space is all medieval and dark, flames and torture equipment, dungeons and punishment. It's just not very deep. It's a good enough foil for Sebastian to confront his trauma within, but that's all it's used for, and it's done so very on the nose. It's good that he's a relevant villain, and the motivation is there on both his and Sebastian's parts, but once he shows up, he's too removed to be threatening, just sitting up there in his dumbass tower. Yeah, so he wants to get Lily, which is where the plan begins to fall apart for the team. He tried to steal her away once he and Myra found her, and once Lily was sort of displaced within Union, the world state became unstable and things fell apart. Theodore would prop up a guy named Stefano, a far more interesting character, to help him in his search for Lily, but as it turns out, you can't trust another psychopath and he wants to keep her for himself. Stefano is cool, more interesting than Theodore by a mile. He's a deranged artist, obsessed with human flesh as the material for his art. You learn that he was actually a war photographer and that the things that he had seen out in the field did some permanent damage to him. He became obsessed with death. What else? And through his art, he has devoted himself to capturing the moment of someone's death. It's all about the burst of a flashbulb as someone finally dies, the flash of light and the flash of light going out of their eyes. He is responsible for the Obscura and the Guardian, the game's two most striking enemies. Stefano is closer to a Reuben from the first game, and I like him. Honestly, I wish they just honed in on Stefano and got rid of Theodore entirely, but whatever. I also love the overt reference to Twin Peaks in Stefano's space. Yeah, it's a not so subtle nod to the goat, but on a meta level, I really appreciate this because he's kind of a hack artist, right? Self-aggrandizing and narcissistic, and even in a world of his own making, he's not original. It's imagery lifted from a much more authentic artist. It's good. Right, so when Theodore betrays Myra, she loses it. She kind of snaps under the stress of STEM and is overtaken by its corrupting influence. She obtains some control over her environment like a psychopath would, but she isn't one. She seems to have this power over the white ectoplasm stuff that you see from that one weird enemy in the marrow. I played through the game a couple times, but I couldn't figure out exactly what this stuff is. It looks kind of like the same stuff that you're submerged in when coming into STEM, and it does seem to get more and more prevalent when the environment begins to deteriorate, but I don't know exactly what it is and why Myra has control over it. Maybe it's the juice that fuels this place. Like the first game, the people slotted into the system provide this psychic material that's needed to fund and kind of expand the world space. And Myra has somehow tapped into that. I don't know, maybe she went crazy for good reasons, I guess. Broken by the crush of Theodore's betrayal after playing the long con of infiltrating Mobius, abandoning her husband and life, only to lose Lily again right as she finds her. She went mad with her desire to protect her daughter, maybe. It's righteous psychosis or something. I don't know. She just wants to protect her kid, but she's corrupted and stuck in STEM, so all she can do is keep others away. It's sad and a good character beat, and it's another painful blow to Sebastian to have to fight against his wife in order to protect their daughter. The Castellanos really go through it in this game. Yeah, so you deal with Stefano and Lily is yanked away once again, this time by Myra. You spend the second half of the game chasing down Theodore with the help of Torres and Hoffman, though Torres doesn't last too long and Hoffman gets consumed by fire on the way to Theodore's tower. Both Torres and Hoffman feel some guilt with working for Mobius. Torres especially, as she was the one who snatched Lily from the family back in the day. They feel redeemed by helping Sebastian and trying to take down Mobius. You fight Theodore after working your way up his tower, but you almost fight him. Myra steps in and takes him out for some reason. But before that, you get a quick little greatest hits collection of Evil Within 1, fighting the Keeper enemy and Laura and dealing with the Chainsaw Guy once and for all. I love this section. You could argue that they're reusing fights from the first game, but it feels like such a celebration of the story. I don't know, it's a triumphant final showdown for Sebastian. He's been through hell and grown and spending the entire game working through his guilt over Beacon. He even admits that there's a part of him that never left. He kills that part of him, literally kills that part of him, as a step towards killing his past. And these fights are another part of that, especially when he bests the chainsaw sadist. It's gory and loud and great. Get him, Sebastian, break free of that past. And yeah, he's almost free now. He just needs the forgiveness of 2 more people, Myra and Lily.
Fuck you.
Which he gets when he finds himself in a recreation of their home. I think this area is sort of like his detective office. It's a safe space created by Myra that you can kind of go to separate from the chaos of Union. Here, she's still totally in control of herself, or maybe it's part of Sebastian's consciousness, it's not clear. I also love this scene. He speaks with Myra and feels bad about everything for a minute, and she encourages him and gives him her blessing to move on. It's all a little heavy-handed, but it's laid out very plainly and clearly. But there is one moment that I really, really love where Sebastian laments not being able to save Lily from the original fire. And Myra is like, dude, that isn't even true. There was no fire. Just watch this part.
I failed you. I couldn't save Lily from the fire. I failed everyone.
That's not true, Sebastian. There was no fire to save her from. You know this now.
But I couldn't protect her.
How could you? Mobius are a force of nature. What you're doing, it's like blaming yourself for an earthquake. It wasn't your fault.
This is such a good representation of guilt and grief. Everything that Sebastian has been through in this game has shown him that he did nothing wrong, that he didn't fail his daughter. Everything was out of his control, but he lived with that reality for years, and sometimes, despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary, you still grieve, you still feel responsibility. Sebastian needs to be reminded of this again and again, that he's not responsible. This one little line is my favorite in the entire series. Sebastian is such a human character, and I admire the writers for really spending time with him in this way. Sure, maybe you want him to get the picture by this point in the game, but it feels real and not at all rushed. This is Sebastian's story first and foremost. So yeah, he makes peace with Myra and reaffirms his vow to save Lily, which he does. He fights the final manifestation from Myra, and now she is seemingly free of her psychosis, and he gets Lily back, but there's one final step. Myra is going to become the new core and take down Mobius from within. In perhaps the greatest oversight known to man, everyone who works for Mobius is tied to the STEM system themselves via these control chips. They're inserted in their head when they sign up. Myra can overload the system and cause its whole infrastructure to collapse from within, killing herself and everybody else connected to STEM. Julie knows that this is the plan and begins securing Sebastian's exit. And they pull it off. Mobius is wiped out, Sebastian and Lily are free, and Julie and Sebastian are redeemed. It's a sweet ending. Sebastian and Julie share a nod of mutual respect and trust. The Castellanos drive off into the sunset, determined to reclaim their lives and move forward. It's a nice ending for Sebastian and no strings attached, right? It's an easy win. Or is it? Yeah, there's the obligatory cliffhanger that we'll never have closure on. Like Joseph. Kidman is all like, oh, we'll talk about Joseph later. He's not dead, don't worry about it. This information comes from the very last projector slide that you find, which makes it feel important. I don't know, maybe it was DLC that got canceled. God, poor Joseph, man. He didn't do anything wrong. So that's Evil Within 2. Some of the charm is definitely lost here, but it feels like a bold direction to go in. It doesn't feel phoned in or directionless. They could have rested on that grindhouse horror vibe from the first game, but they went bigger and really spent the entire focus of the game on the consequences of the first one. Not on a grand level, but on a personal level. It could have brought in a whole new cast and a totally new setting, but it didn't. It wanted to wrap up the characters from the first game, aside from our boy Joseph, and dig into that world rather than build out the greater world of Evil Within. I have a lot of respect for that, and it's a big reason why I hold this game in such revere. And it's not just the story, the expanded weapons, the smoother controls, the more capable combat makes it feel less like a survival horror and more like an action horror, and I don't mind that. It also reflects their commitment to Sebastian, as he's a much more competent survivor than he was the first time around. For only having one game that came before it, Evil Within 2 feels like such a celebration of the series, as well as a eulogy for it. It wraps up that story so nicely that it almost feels like they didn't want to continue after this. Whatever the case, the series is in permanent stasis. If we don't get anything else, I'm happy with the direction the game went and the ending that we got. Thanks for watching.
You're the best around, Detective.
And nothing's ever gonna keep me down.